What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. We're trying to get this one out as soon as we can on Friday, ahead of the deadline. Lots of people wildcarding this week. Lots of you requested me to make an updated wildcard video. So I did the guide at the start. That was more on shortlists and all that kind of stuff. And obviously I thought about it at the start of the week, and things do change as the week goes on, or like my opinions do, my thoughts on certain players, etc. And that's probably happened to a certain extent. So in this video I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter, although my video is ever short, and I'm just going to do drafts, right? I've still not just got one, because I think that's too easy, too boring. People just look at it, copy it. So I've got two different drafts, and then I'm still going to do some tinkering at the end and just talk about some more players. So don't tell me the video is too long. If you just want to look at the drafts, you can skip forward and watch the drafts. If you want to see the tinkering at the end, we can do that too. Give it a like, because it's a wildcard video. It's coming out early on Friday. Hit subscribe if you're around here, because we're trying to get to 150k. Let's jump into it. So the first draft is the Jamie Vardy draft. And the reason I've called it that is, well, one, Jamie Vardy's in it, so that was kind of a good creative name. But also, Bruno Fernandes isn't, okay? Now, don't worry, he is in the next draft. Don't panic. I think when you do a wildcard, preferably, obviously you want to just get a good squad that's good for the rest of the fixtures, right? Obviously, you've got some transfers as well. But especially when it comes to defenders, you want to be kind of have a pretty good base, right? So you don't have to make a huge amount of transfers as you go on. And I actually think that these players maybe don't quite do that, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. But also you want to try and do something maybe a little bit different, but not different for the sake of it, right? You want a proven player like Jamie Vardy, right? So looking at the fixtures, Bruno Fernandes has Spurs and Liverpool in the next four. Does that mean Man United won't score? No. Does that mean Bruno Fernandes won't get points? No. But they are two fairly difficult fixtures where Man United have tended to play defensive, cautious, whatever you want to call it, on the counter, etc., and haven't necessarily been able to do that very well. Fred and McTominay, if they're fit, will probably play those games. They're those kind of fixtures where they don't want to concede, they don't want to lose the games. And then it's Burnley and Leeds. So those fixtures are great, right? I really like those fixtures. Going without Bruno for game week 33 against Leeds, that could really hurt. It will be a horrible watch for anyone that doesn't either support Man United or own Bruno Fernandes, right? I fully agree. I think he's a great option for those two. Then you look at Jamie Vardy over this. I was about to click on my screen that I'm recording, right? Then I look at Jamie Vardy, right? So I pull the fixtures up on my other screen. I'll look at all this when I do the tinkering in a sec. West Ham away, okay, that could be difficult, but then it's West Brom, Crystal Palace, Southampton. So those two fixtures that are really good for Bruno, Burnley and Leeds, Jamie Vardy has West Brom and Palace, right? Not necessarily any worse. Now, there's lots of reasons why you might not want to go for Jamie Vardy, right? I've been discussing them with the Patreons today in Slack. There's loads of reasons. One, if you want to reverse that money, so if you want to put that money into midfield later on, that's going to cost you two transfers. In a small sample size, albeit a small sample size, over the last six, Iheanacho has kind of outperformed him in terms of kind of shots, creating chances and all that stuff. So maybe for a less money, he's worth going for. And obviously, if you're someone that likes form, he's out of form. He hasn't scored very many goals in the last kind of 14 or so weeks. Personally, like I've looked at the expected data for this season and last season. It's virtually identical, right? I've actually got it written here. So this season, it's 0.45 XG per 90 and 0.18 expected assists. That's 0.63 expected goal involvement per 90 minutes. And bearing in mind, this is a player that usually starts, usually gets 90 minutes. Last season, it was 0.49, so that was 0.04 up, and 0.16 expected assists, which was 0.02 down. So overall, last season, he was 0.02 XGI, expected goal involvement per 90, better off. So basically, that's a long way of saying the stats are very similar. It might not have translated into goals. And by the way, all those numbers don't even include penalties, which we know he's on. So that's not even really an advantage for Man United, bearing in mind that Leicester have also got quite a few penalties. Although I guess without having gone and looked at it, I suppose Harvey Barnes would have maybe won some of them. So perhaps they're not going to get so many. But I just think with the fixtures, it's worth the punt. And then maybe you reverse it later on. Yes, it's going to cost you two transfers. But hopefully with a wildcard team, the amount of transfers you'll have to do is limited. So he's in. To fund that, I've had to go for, to fund the defence, I've had to go for Smith Rowe in midfield. I'm not sure it's worth downgrading someone like Azpilicueta or Trent Alexander-Arnold just to get Lingard in. Like, Lingard plays Leicester and Chelsea in the next 3 games. And I don't think you've missed the boat. I still think he's good value, but I think you can probably target better fixtures, which is why I've put Neto in there, right? So Wolves fixtures are Fulham away, Sheffield United at home, Burnley at home, West Brom away. Really good. There's a chance that Neto could outscore Lingard, especially a Lingard that may not have Antonio and probably doesn't have Declan Rice either. That might mean that he gets to push further forward without Antonio. Depends what he and Bowen do. They might just interchange in that kind of number 9 spot. But I would probably just bet on the fixtures. If you wanted to have a good playing squad where you have like a Lingard and a Neto, then yes, you would have to downgrade Trent. You could go for Phillips instead. I'm going to tinker around with that in a minute. And I've actually gone for 2 Chelsea defenders instead of Mendy. I know people don't like Arsenal. Again, you can tell me how many, or the lack of clean sheets that they've had since January. But the fixtures are so good. And obviously he's nailed. And the fixtures are good for the rest of the season versus Mendy, who's are good for the next 4. And so I just think I would probably just go for the Chelsea defenders. You could there's a few changes you could make in this team, by the way. You could go for Alonso instead of Azpilicueta, bearing in mind that you've got a decent squad to cover for any games that he misses. I also think that Fofana and Cody is definitely targeting fixtures, but you might want to look at a defender that's got slightly better long-term fixtures. But for the next 4 or 5, they look great. So Fofana's the cheapest way into Leicester. I probably overlooked him a bit on my first wildcard guide. I still haven't gone for Diaz. I just think there's probably better value options at the moment. And I think Cody looks fine. But maybe a Luke Shaw until the end of the season you could go for instead. And the last thing I'll touch on with this draft is Vardy and Iheanacho. I put, for some reason there's this, stigma about having 2 strikers from the same team. We're happy to have Kane and Son. We're happy to have Vardy and Maddison. We're happy to have, I don't know, whoever else. Right? I can't even think of someone right now. But Aguero and De Bruyne, whatever, back in the day at least. But we can't have Vardy and Iheanacho. But the way things are going, if Antonio's out, Bamford's fixtures aren't very good. Watkins, Grealish looks like he's going to be out for a couple of more weeks as well. I think going for Iheanacho with the fixtures looks good. There's a risk that he doesn't play, in which case you're maybe a little bit stuck because you've got Smith Rowe, but you've got defenders that can cover. You've got money that you can take from Trent Alexander-Arnold if you want. You could downgrade Azpilicueta, and you could just go back to Jamie Vardy. But I think for the fixtures Leicester have got that I just spoke about, he's a pretty good pick. So this is one of the drafts I've kind of talked myself into, even though I don't have a wildcard, by the way. I probably should have said that at the top of the video. Let's look at the Bruno draft. So I know what people's opinions are of Bruno, and I've told you this before. I love the guy. I'm so glad he's at Man United. He's brilliant. The amount of tweets and comments I get saying, of course you're getting red arrows, you've not got Bruno Fernandes, you're never going to win FPL without Bruno Fernandes, right? I know what people think about him, so he is in this draft. And straight away, or arguably, you could say that this draft is a little bit more balanced in the fact that, even if Iheanacho doesn't play, you've got Vidra, and both of them are starting right now, so it probably doesn't matter a huge amount. You only need to play one of them each week. So you could play Vidra this week if you really wanted to against Newcastle and bench Iheanacho, then have Iheanacho back for West Brom. I'm not going to go over the Bruno stuff again, right? It's just the fact that he plays Spurs away and Liverpool at home in the next 4. I'm just not massively sure about. And if you watch the captaincy video, I think he's only had 3 shots in the box in the last 4 matches, so less than 1 a game. And obviously there is some reliance on penalties there, just like there is with Vardy. I'm not saying, that's a negative for Bruno and then a plus for Vardy, right? That would be hypocritical. It's great that they've got penalties, but in terms of shots in the box, Bruno's just not doing it right now. It doesn't mean that he won't, but my kind of view is that Spurs and Liverpool, he'll probably play a little bit deeper because that's what he's done in previous top 6 matches. It doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to go, but that's just what I'm thinking about. But if he's a player that you want long term, this requires less structure changing, so you don't have to swap that money back into attack. You don't lose money on him if you've already got him, because I'm having to pay 11.6 million. Some of you are probably only having to pay 11 or 11.1. So I don't think it's a problem at all. I've also had to reduce Azpilicueta down to Sofao. It does mean you could go for Mendy in goal if you wanted to, but I kind of like the fact that Leno's fixtures are quite good for the rest of the season, even if Arsenal aren't necessarily brilliant. Fofana and Cody, again, same thing. You could swap them if you wanted to. I didn't really talk about the rest of the midfield. I've got Kane and Son in there. That's a given. For me, Salah and Jota are an absolute given as well. There's no way I would wildcard without those two. You've got a squad that can cope with any benchings for either player, mostly for Jota, and the fixtures are just ridiculous, right? I don't need to bang on about that again. So I would definitely have them. And overall, the squad's looking pretty good. Again, Sofao could be someone different if you wanted to, but West Ham's fixtures for the rest of the season aren't bad. When I tinker in a sec, I'm going to go through some drafts with Phillips as well. But this is the way that I would probably look to fit Fernandes in. I haven't gone for a third Spurs player. There's a couple of different strategies you could do. You could start with Lloris in goal and use a transfer on him in Game Week 33 because Forster's a given, right? Everyone's going to have Forster if you're on a wild card, but he also blanks in 33. So if you go for Lloris as well, you are either telling yourself you're going for 10 men max in Game Week 33 or you're enforcing a transfer straight away, which I don't think is a bad thing. If your squad's set up well for 31, 32, and then you've got 2 free like basically whatever squad you make this week, preferably you have no need to make a transfer next week so that you've got 2 for 33. So that means you could either start with Reguilon and then move him on, or you could start with Lloris and move him on. It really depends what you're doing. If you're one of those people that's going for a Sterling punt this week or an Aguero punt or whoever it might be, then you're backing yourself into a transfer next week. Therefore, you'll probably only have 1 for Game Week 33. It doesn't mean you can't take a hit, but you've got a wild card. You really want to be trying to reduce the amount of hits that you take over the next few weeks. So my main problem with Sterling is, in this draft, it's probably okay. You could go Sterling to Fernandes, but in the previous one, there's only really Salah, and I'd want Salah for this week anyway. So then you're going to have to start with Sterling, then go to Son, but then you've got like 2 million in cash saved up, which you then got to try and use. I don't think it's worth it. So I like the idea of Man City punts. For me, I probably wouldn't even own any. That's the Bruno draft. Let's do some tinkering. So I didn't do my usual caveat at the start, but obviously, yes, your team value and stuff might be lower, might be higher. You might be able to do different things. Take that into account when you build your team. So this is the Vardy draft without Bruno. And obviously Smith Rowe is 4.2 million. I've got 0.9, so I could go up to 5.1. There's not really anyone I would go for. Burke at Sheffield United is actually 4.1, I think. So if you really wanted to cheap out on this spot, you could go for Burn. He's 4.1 million. I'm not sure. I mean, we've seen midfielders come in at 4. I don't know if we've seen one go down to 4.1. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation for another video. So I'm just going to put Smith Rowe because I think there's a chance he at least gets some minutes if I can find him. So straight away, the first question I'm asking myself is, what can I do with the money if I do Trent down to Phillips? Now, as it stands, I think Phillips is pretty nailed on. I think it'd be almost crazy. By the way, why have Liverpool got so many goalkeepers? But it'd be crazy to change the centre-back partnership again unless Phillips starts making huge mistakes. Now, that gives me 4.2 million in the bank. It might give you a little bit more, a little bit less. But for Smith Rowe, 8.4 million, I don't even know who I'd buy. Honestly, I think Lingard's an option. For sure, and I think let me just go to this 8. So we can literally go to 8.4. So Gundogan might be an okay option this week. You're probably looking to sell him next week. Mahrez, will he start? I mean, Mahrez is everybody's favourite punt. Look at the amount of games he started. His stats are great. He's someone I'd love. Grealish is still injured. Harvey Barnes is injured. Harrison's injured, apparently. Oh, of course, he's on loan, of course. Yeah, everyone forgets about that, myself included. Mount, not convinced. Neto's already in the team. Maddison, we don't know if he'll start. Rafinha, okay, but he's got bad fixtures. Man City starting up. Zaha, just would not trust them at all. Bowen, yeah, okay, but you probably just get Lingard. Saka, will he keep starting with the Europa League? I just don't like what you can do with that money. So therefore, I probably wouldn't change the midfielder. I would either just go for Lingard or I would just get a cheap one like Smith Rowe. But let's put Lingard in because people might want an overall better squad. That still gives us 2.1 million. So first of all, something to consider is the more times you spread that around, the harder it is then to restructure if you just want to have like a best 11 with the most money possible. As I found out on my Game Week 18 wildcard, it took me until very recently to kind of restructure my squad. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Having a good squad is not a bad thing at all, but it's something to think about. So 2.1 million, you could go from Rudiger to Alonso if you wanted to take a punt. You could upgrade Fofana or Cody or something like that. You could upgrade the goalkeeper if you wanted to. Reguilon could come in, Lloris could come in or something like that. But I don't know if it improves your squad enough to warrant not having Trent. I don't know. I'm still, as much as I'm kind of like bullish about Liverpool, the defence is still something I'm not 100% sure of. But I just look at these. Can I scroll down? I can't scroll down. That's so annoying. Villa, Leeds, Newcastle, Southampton, West Brom, Burnley, Palace. You're on a wild card. You can just get someone like Trent now and just keep him for the rest of the season. It just seems too easy, doesn't it? So let's just put Smith Rowe back in here. In fact, let's just play around with the Fernandes one a sec. So Fernandes can come in. Jamie Vardy obviously has to go out. and most people would probably just go for Vidra. With Barnes, by the way, he's like, oh, you can't see that either. He's got a thigh injury apparently, no return date, so we don't really know when he's going to be back. Could it be soon? Maybe. And then you got 1.2 million. So again, you either have to start looking at dropping some of the defenders, so Azpilicueta down to a 4.7, or maybe this is where you drop Trent down, right? So you can go for put Azpilicueta back in. You can spend 6.1. So I think Diaz is maybe more. I think Diaz actually went up last night. Yeah, he's 6.2 now. You could get just you could go down to Phillips. I would say there's no reason why you have to spend all the money, but it feels worth it. I don't know. It feels like there's just too many changes that have to happen for this Bruno Fernandes squad. There's probably things that I'm not thinking about as well. And I would say, like, when someone's not wildcard and they don't give it as much thought, or they don't think about things that people with a wildcard do. So keep that in mind when you're asking other people questions, including myself. But I probably would ignore Man City. So you could go down to a Shaw. He went off. We'll have to wait and see if Solskjaer has a press conference today. But he's suspended for the next Europa League game. So he should play Burnley. Leeds, Liverpool, Villa, if Grealish is back. Leicester, are these fixtures Man United are going to keep a clean sheet in? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. And I don't really like most of the options that you could go for, at least that I've thought about. So I'd probably just go for the Vardy draft. Yeah, there's not really any other players to talk about. I'm not going to prolong the video anymore. Thanks for listening to that. Let me know what you think of these drafts and who are you massively changing in the comments below. So there we go, that's it for this one. I kind of went to end the video on the last screen when I was doing the tinkering. Then I remembered I usually do it on this one, so I thought I'd just stop and just do the outro as normal. So there we go. Please do give it a like. Try to get up a wildcard draft video as quickly as I can before the deadline. Obviously, hit subscribe if you're around here and the notification bell. We're going to be back today for an extra long deadline stream. It's probably going to be 2 hours, 4:30 till 6:30. And then it'll be the Game Week 31 deadline. You'll have to get your wildcards locked in. I'm not going to leave it any longer there because I'm going to go and get this edited, rendered, uploaded. But yeah, give it a like if you've enjoyed it. Hit subscribe and hopefully I'll see you later for the deadline stream.